I decided to take a road trip that I'd been dreaming about for years. So I went onto Turo and found myself a Camry, and I drove it all the way from Florida to South Carolina to see why it's been the best-selling car in the US for the last 25 years. Except at one time in 2001, when I lost to the Honda Accord. That year, the Camry came in second. And yeah, I can't really tell the difference between these two cars either. Maybe people walked into a Honda dealership thinking they were buying a Camry. Who knows? But on this trip, me and Lisa have seen some amazing sights, ate some great food, and visited some beautiful historic cities in the south.
How's your trip so far?
Good. I've waited years to come here. Well, about 5 years.
Yeah.
Here with you. So, 4 hours driving with this Camry. It's been a good road test so far.
Right. We are 1 minute away.
1 minute away from the destination. From the beautiful historic city of Savannah. In the US, this thing has been a sales behemoth. They are everywhere you go. In the UK, I bet no one's ever seen one of these. And that's a shame because typically sedans just aren't that popular in the UK. We prefer hatchbacks, and Toyota as a brand, that's also not that popular for some reason. And I don't know why. Some viewers may be surprised to know that you can buy this in the UK, but no one did. And that's a damn shame because this is a very, very, very good car. I drove this across 3 states. I drove it for 6 hours yesterday, and I had zero pain when I got out. I wasn't fidgeting, and I arrived at my destination pretty much just as good as I left where I started. And that's what this car's very good at. It gets you to where you need to be without being any worse off by the time you get there. In terms of reliability, in terms of comfort, in terms of requirements, and even fuel economy, it does all those things absolutely fantastically. This is not a entry-level executive car. No, this is just a kind of affordable, mainstream, mid-sized saloon. The biggest competition we'd have in the UK is something like the Ford Mondeo, which is a Ford Fusion for any US viewers. But I can say this is a much better car. I've drove the Mondeo quite a lot. As you know, I've just recently left Ford Motor Company, and I quite extensively drove a 2019 EcoBoost Mondeo with a 1.5-litre engine. And this is just a better car, hands down. It's quieter, it's more refined, it handles better, it's far more comfortable, and goes better in a straight line. If people knew about this car in the UK, I'm sure more people would buy it, but we didn't. And that's a shame. Now, of course, I did say all these good virtues about the car, but one thing the Camry is not is exciting. Despite its looks, which I think are actually sharp. I mean, I think this is the best looking Camry there's ever been. It actually does look quite purposeful. It still doesn't excite the soul. No 10-year-old's going to have this on the bedroom wall. And I think Toyota's okay with that because, well, they've got the Supra for that. This, though, is people who are sensible. It's a buy with your head, not with your heart purchase. I want to start off with the center console design. So firstly, we've got with the armresters, this big cavernous space. It's huge. And I wish most cars had something like this. They could really make a lot of cars this big inside, and it's a shame they don't. It's so useful in here. And I like the fact that you've got a USB Type-C port and a Type-A for charging right out of the way. That's super nice. Then we've got a couple of good-sized cup holders. And then here is another section where you can stick your phone and stuff. But push it down, there's another good-sized compartment underneath there. And that's all really, really nice. And just finishing off at the top, there's also a sunglasses holder. So the amount of practicality just in this middle section is insane, and it's probably the best of any car I've actually ever been in. Secondly, if we look at these sun visors, we've got an extra bit that comes out. So if we move it to the side position, we can actually pull and extend the sun visors to there. And that's really useful, especially on US roads, because they tend to just go in a straight line. If you've got the sun next to you, this does an excellent job of blocking it out from hitting you in the face. I actually found this very useful when just travelling north up the interstate because this really kept the sun off my face. And moving on to the climate control buttons, they are still buttons. No stupid touch displays, everything is on knobs and just good old-fashioned common sense. So, although this panel's good, this one not so much. For one reason is that there's no quick way of turning the screen off. And driving at night, this screen is blasting you in the face, even on its minimum brightness. You actually can turn it off, but you have to go to menu, display, and then you have to go to screen off. And while that doesn't look too much on here, when you're driving down the roads and your fingers moving and such, it's actually a lot more complicated than it needs to be. We need one button right there that turns the screen off. Right down in the gear lever, we've got different modes: eco, normal, sports. They're nice and easy to change and super easy to hit. What I don't like though is when you're in drive, you have to flip over to the left to get sport mode on the transmission. But it just seems to do like kind of the same thing as hitting sport on here. But that seems to drop it down a gear and increase throttle response. That seems to drop it down 2 gears. And when you're in sports mode on the transmission side of stuff, you can shift up and down. But you can't in drive. Unless you hit the flappy paddles, and then you can do it. It's just a bit overcomplicated, and I'm still not quite sure how this all works together. Every time I start the car and I turn the cruise control on, the distance always resets to the longest. It doesn't remember what distance you last set it to. And that's actually quite annoying because in this far distance, it just brakes way too early. So it kind of has a panic attack that a car pulls in front of you and it slams on the brakes. In close distance, it's actually really, really good. It eases off the accelerator nice and gently and doesn't throw any panic fits. So I always want it in the close version because it represents more everyday driving. But typically, it wants to be far. Whilst the boot is a good size and there's a big, nice access hatch and it can hold lots of stuff, you do find that these arms that hold the boot up come down where your cargo is. Make sure you've got nothing like a laptop underneath there, because if that hits it, you could very easily crack your screen. Also, this hatch for the back seat, it's just not that big. You're not going to really get any suitcases through there because you've got this load lip as well. So long items, unless it's something like golf clubs, they're not going to fit through here. That's actually very, very small. I've never seen a hatch so small in the back of the car. So you have got folding seats, but they're not great. There is one thing that super annoys me about this Camry, and it's the radar guided cruise control, or the ADAS system kind of in it. The cruise control is great. It doesn't freak out like a lot of these cruise controls can, the radar guided ones. It gently brakes and lets off the gas when you get close to a car. And it will also keep you centered in the lane. That's nice as well. So on the highway, pretty much drives itself. However, what happens is as soon as you go over a white line a bit, the car gives you this annoying beep. And there's no way I've found it turning that off. Because sometimes you do occasionally intentionally go over the white line and it just beeps you every time. You got to relax and drive and then suddenly it's just, yeah. That's the one thing about this car that's annoyed me. Going back to that Ford Mondeo / Ford Fusion comparison, whilst the radar guided cruise control in this is much better than the Ford system in terms of not having that slamming on the brakes type panic attack, the beeping on the other hand, the alert system, that is really not good on the Toyotas. And that's where Fords really do shine compared to Toyotas. Because I find with their system, you can actually just disable it by pushing the end of the indicator stalk, and all this lane guidance just turns off completely. And if you do have it enabled, on the Ford one, it actually doesn't beep it to you. It just gives you a slight vibration to the wheel to say like, hey mate, just watch your lane guidance, get back in, and that's it. So passengers next to you are not getting this beeping all the time. If you've got someone who's a nervous passenger, you don't exactly want this beeping going on at them all the time because it's just going to be a bit disruptive. So in the next generation of Camry or next generation of Toyotas, it'd be really cool to see that type of system be adopted, which is more in line with what Fords are using. Driving the Camry is unremarkable in pretty much every sense of the word. And that's exactly why it's a good car to drive. Not from an enthusiast perspective, not from something that's going to evoke emotions and set your soul on fire. No, this is not the car for that. What this is really good at is just being a nice long distance cruiser. The seats seem absolutely perfect for long distances without hurting your back. I mean, I've been in this car for about 3 hours today and I'm completely fresh. The car's quiet, it's refined, and essentially just takes care of itself. Just like you would expect a Camry to do, it gets the job done. It rides bumps really well, and up here there's a good amount of space. The steering is devoid of pretty much all feel, but it's direct and sharp enough. And the suspension is, again,
Sharp enough to not be walloway in the bends, but also soft enough to ride bumps really, really well, even on these relatively low profile tyres. And the noise in the cabin is very, very acceptable as well. The Camry's always been a somewhat affordable mid-sized saloon, and it still lives up to that exactly. Where you've got that mix of decent quality, build quality is decent, but it's not on a Mercedes level as you wouldn't expect, or a Lexus level. But it's also not a tin box. And the equipment again here is a mix of everything you need and nothing you don't. So in this SE spec, which is slightly lower in the range, it's still decent up here. I mean, I've got a good mix firstly of classical equipment. I've got a key, just a traditional key. How nice is that to still have in the car? And down here I've got foot operated parking brake. No one of those fiddly little overcomplicated switches that can always go wrong. The dials are still dials, but it's still got a small information cluster in the middle of the screen, and I've still got Apple CarPlay over here, but it's complemented by physical climate control buttons. And that's where this car really just makes sense. They've not tried to set the world on fire with its design. It's an evolution. It's don't break something if it's not broken. And that's exactly what's made this car so popular. And quite frankly, one thing that's really nice about having a car you don't know you're driving is you get to enjoy views like this. Going down the historic A1A scenic highway all down the coast of Florida and seeing the beach houses and the trees and basking in a sunset coming down. That's a pretty good road trip, I think. Except for that